Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the third panel session of the day, Corporate Culture, the Center of Strong Ethics and Compliance.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've come to the final session, and this is on the third panel. The subject matter that we're going to speak about is something really close to my heart. It's corporate culture, the center of strong ethics and compliance. It gives me great pleasure, and it's a privilege to have three distinguished guests, two that are here, and Mr. Sanjeev Gathani, Chief Compliance Officer, who is actually joining us virtually. We have got YBhg, Datin, Yasmin, Merican, Governor of Malaysia Institute of Corporate Governance, and Dr. Veerinderjeet Singh, Non-Executive Chairman of Tricor Malaysia. So welcome back into our third session. I wanted to just start off with this because ethical culture pays, and we've heard a lot about this. Over half of senior executives believe that corporate culture is a top 3 driver of firm value, and 92% believe that improving their culture would increase their firm's value. Evidence from research suggests a strong ethical culture can provide significant benefits to an organization, such as increased employee job satisfaction, effective commitment, and willingness to recommend their organization to others, reduce employee burnout, and increase intention to stay, decrease illegal activity and increase moral behaviors, and finally, improve organizational performance, value, and innovativeness. I would like to quickly introduce YBhg Datin Yasmin Ahmad Merican, Governor, Malaysian Institute of Corporate Governance, a former global consulting partner of Ernst & Young International, first female to be appointed to the local practice of Ernst & Young, and the first female partner to be seconded to the Asia-Pacific consulting practice of Ernst & Young, Global Consulting at Ernst & Young Malaysia. Datin Yasmin Ahmad Merican sits on the boards of Aon Malaysia. At EY, she led the development of the knowledge and customer management solutions in the Asia-Pacific region. Cukup. Yeah, I know. Because of shortage of time, I'm going to keep introductions really short. And I've just got Datin Yasmin saying, cukup. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into it first. I'm going to ask you the very first question because we're short of time, right? Okay. You have heard a practitioner's perspective on how organizations improve governance through better compliance. Do you agree that this is the scenario in Malaysia?
I've worked as a consultant in Malaysia and also internationally, but just working with the two different, sort of work cultures, the multinational culture, as well as and I worked for about 20 years with GLCs as well, as also as a consultant. But, there's definitely a difference between the MNC work culture and the Malaysian work culture. And someone just mentioned earlier that, I think it's Transparency International who said that, there must be transparency and accountability. Many years ago, when I was in my younger days, we did sort of looked at research. It was interesting this is a global research by Hofstede, and it sort of evaluated 60 countries. And Malaysia, apparently, when it comes to power distance, we are at the bottom. The US is on the other side. We are at the number 60. So what that tells us is that in Malaysia, and this was like 40 years ago, 1960, so that's 50 years, yeah? 50 over years ago, we have a fear of authority. So we do not actually respect, it's not so much respect, but we just do not want to engage with anybody senior or higher up in the organization. But 50 years later, and as I was working through as a professional, I realized that is the most crippling trait of our work culture. in that if we see something that is not right, it's far better to keep quiet and not go and report it. And I think one is that we we are conditioned, I don't know, maybe because you have bosses or superiors saying to you that you can't do this or can't do that. And the price for going against that can be very high. So we're sort of socialized into it. And so even today, when I go to companies and I see what's happening, it's still happening. Yeah. So when you talk about corporate culture, it's of course different across communities, across countries. But for Malaysia, now that I'm with governance and I'm hoping that in MICG we can assume our role as the national body to do some wonderful things and to work with the as Dr. Rizzo was saying that we should be working with our partners. I think, just improving governance, and you still have Transparency International every year telling you that you're going down the corruption index, that's not on. Yeah? In that, so what's all these things that we are doing in governance? Everything that we do from compliance, improving internal audit, improving our communications. But you know what? At the end of the day, the world looks at us, and we are number, 52? And potentially even going further. So something is not happening. Something is definitely not happening. So when I look at the corporate environment, there are three things that happens in the corporate environment. Yeah, we talked about the individual. If you have good self-governance, you know what to do, and you know what's right or wrong. You self-govern, right? Now, then there's the team, and then the department. You're the head of department. He or she should know what's right or wrong. And it goes up, right? It goes up all the way to the management and then finally to the board. So when you look at that, there's so many filters for us to do right. But why is it that we don't? So the issue here is that there's a problem of process, there's a problem of content. We talked about education. Dr. Anis, you said that we need to educate people about what's right and wrong and what the penalties for it. But generally, there is... there's a lack of knowledge about, why should I bother about it? My boss should worry about it because he makes the decision, and it's sort of passed upwards. And finally to the board. Now, if the chairman and the board do not arrest it at that level, what chance do we have? So all the investment that we put into governance and compliance and what have you is just, business as usual. But for us in Malaysia, governance is a nice word. Many people, including myself, we like to be associated with governance. It's a lovely word, right? And compliance is also another nice word. But nobody likes corruption. When you see the word corruption, you get uncomfortable, right? So because you're uncomfortable, you do not want to actually admit that there is a relationship between governance and corruption. There must be. So this is where I think language and terminology, I think we need to redefine in the context of Malaysia, because, Malaysians we're rather resilient, right, as a people. Very tolak ansur lah, And we seem to think that we can always overcome everything. And that's a wonderful trait of Malaysia, yeah? But the thing is that we have to actually now redefine, re-articulate, what is corruption anyway? So that the individual, whether you're in public service or whether you are in a corporate environment, you understand at your level, if you do this, corruption is, taking money that's not yours, giving contracts to people that don't deserve it, power abuse. So I don't hear that conversation in organizations. I don't hear it. Maybe it's done at orientation, at HR levels, but to me, I think for us in MICG, I think we hope, anyway, it's a new team and we are sort of very excited about what we can and what we cannot do, but we hope that we can do something. The idea is to actually look at corruption as our burning platform, as a nation. That if we don't do any other thing, if we can actually communicate to the rest of the world that we are actively going to reduce corruption because we believe that we are not a corrupted nation, we believe, right? And that we're going to do a lot of things to signal that, institutions, in both government of course it's tough, public governance is a real challenge, but you make a start. Once we start actually signaling this to the rest of the world and to the people of this country, I think we'll make a start. But I think the problem right now is communication and understanding that corruption is really the core of what we do in governance and compliance. I don't know, do you agree?
Thank you for that. Dr. Veerinderjeet Singh, you might want to add in.
Yeah, thank you. No, corruption is equated with cancer, all right? They both start with a C. Cancer we are afraid of, but corruption we tend to condone. So we need to equate this. When you look at culture, it's a very big word, and then the definitional aspects of culture, and I have read previously, we have Hofstede, who came up with the dimensions of culture, and Yasmin mentioned about power distance. The other is about individualistic versus collective behavior, and we are strong on collective behavior. The Western world is strong on individualistic behavior. That hasn't changed, but I personally think that when you look at an organization like a listed company and large enough organization, when you say tone starts from the top, but here I'm using that context for the CEO. The CEO runs management, runs a team. He needs to set the tone as well. But you're right that in an organization, in Malaysia in particular, and this is kind of symptomatic of a developing country, the issue is herd mentality. Issue is, I don't want to rock the boat. Someone else will do this. Why should I do it? Things like that, right? And so we now have these whistleblowing aspects. Even with listed companies, you have a whistleblowing option and so on. Has that really worked? I think we need to analyze that. And sometimes in GLCs, for example, when you look at the whistleblowing channel, more or less it's about to complain about management rather than exposing a wrongdoing. So this is the other culture we have, which is kind of emanates from the civil service as well, in terms of just complain about bosses and that's it. So when Dr. Anis earlier talked about education, it's true, but it has to start with your leaders, right? Your leaders, in the boards, we want the tone from the top, which basically the chairman and the board must make it very clear. And not once in a year, consistently. And similarly in government, we have now Anwar Ibrahim saying that, and he should keep saying that and walking the talk. But then the issue is when we find that one of the ministers is pulled up for some alleged charge, then we will say one is not guilty until you're proven guilty. So that's the other way of looking at it. In a Western world, when you are pulled up for a charge and you have to answer a charge, you take a leave of absence or you leave. That culture is not yet here, and that's what we should be pushing for. So culture is multidimensional. In an organization, the CEO has to walk the talk. And I see that in boards as well, that in the end of the day, you find that even among an organization, the CEO and the C-suites, there is cliques being formed, and they stick together, and therefore the challenges are, how do you then bring substantive change? But this is very prevalent in a GLC, not so in MNCs. So MNCs, you have a lot more individualistic behavior, looking for the common good. This because that culture has been set by the MNC, the value system, and walking the talk. So I think I concur with most of what Yasmin said, and really that's the way we should be looking at it, and so on.
Thank you so much for that.
So I guess the question is, if we're stuck with this culture, what do we do with it?
Correct.
Because you can't change culture overnight, but you can definitely change structure. You can definitely change policies. You can definitely change. It's a carrot and stick thing, right? you reward positive behaviors and you punish, the bad behaviors. But I always think, because, I've spent a lot of time also looking at intercultural learning between companies in the West and companies in Malaysia. I am of the humble opinion that we are very ambitious when we say that we can change this culture, because Malaysia is a multicultural society. We're not homogeneous like Indonesia or Thailand, or we are so many different cultures. So the ramifications of trying to change this multifaceted culture it's not easy. So if you take it as a given, we are Malaysians, so this is the way we are. But how do we actually now use the learning of the West in trying to actually institutionalize good governance into our multicultural society? So that is the biggest challenge. And I think, Anis, you said just now, Professor Anis, you said earlier that the Western model don't work for us. It doesn't. It doesn't. But the thing is, we can emulate the good in their model, but if we take it as a given, I think we have a better chance if we can change structure, policy, the content of what we actually educate them with, and of course, the most important thing, the strength of leadership, the integrity of leadership. That in itself is going to change everything. So, anyway, that's my personal.
Thank you so much, Datin, Yasmin, for that, and also for Dr. Veerinderjeet Singh. I want to just make sure that Mr. Sanjeev Gathani, who is actually joining us virtually, he's the Chief Compliance Officer for RV Group and is signing in today. Going to be posing this next question in view of time. I'm under pressure right now because I'm sure many of you are waiting to go for lunch, and I'm the final, we're in the final list here, so I'm going to try and make it really short.
Final question.
A final question, oh God, okay. So here you go. Please do share with the audience a scenario of a best practice that has been implemented successfully and what steps were taken by this organization.
Thank you for the
Gathani,
question.
can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Yeah. And I sincerely apologize to all for not being physically, because I'm flying out tonight.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, did you get the question just now, Dr. Sanjeev?
I think there's something wrong with the transmission.
Yeah, so to give you an example of a company that implemented risk management, properly, and one is my former company I worked for. We used to manufacture aircraft tires. And in aircraft tires, there is a lot of risk, and you got to manage it, because at the end of the day, you are held accountable throughout the life of the aircraft. The tire cannot be changed to another manufacturer. So what we did was, after we said that, okay, we have identified, we went to the different activity, right, and the processes. Then each of the stages, we empowered the people, right? That's what both my fellow panelists have said. We empowered them, and if there's anything wrong, they could highlight it. And we also gave the stick and carrot approach, right? So where they did bad, we reprimanded. Where they did good, we congratulated them. And we put this throughout that process, right? So to aircraft tire, we our work, everybody understood. They then made it compliance by design. So it's like just when you wake up in the morning, you look at your handphone.
Yeah,
Maybe I can take
it's
the
gone
question.
frozen. Mr. Sanjeev?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one experience. I won't mention the name of the company, but it's a large, successful Malaysian. Well, it's a GLC, isn't it? Anyway, so but this company has got everything they do is based on their 4 values. which is, cohesiveness, loyalty, integrity, and professionalism. So every young recruit that enters the organization, they are orientated towards what does this mean to be part of this organization. So they drill it down. Cohesiveness means X, Y, Z, and all the way up to professionalism. Now, this is one company because it's so simple. Because of those 4 values, and they reward you for actually adhering to these principles, everything else just responds, and governance and ethics and everything. So I think values is the most important thing, driven by a strong leader. So that, I think, is, it happens even in Malaysia, but you do need that strength and resilience of that leader to see it through. I was just talking to my colleague here that even though we learn all kinds of things from the internationals, and we both have worked with the global consulting firms of the world, where they, people, process, structure, technology, and all these things, these wonderful words that come from them anyway, it works for them. But for a developing world, I think because we're sort of maturing and we are evolving, we definitely need only one thing: the strength and clarity of leadership. That's the only thing that will actually change, whether it's governance, compliance, or ethics, or whatever. Because that gives us a start. Because he or she can move everybody. But if we were to do all the little things that and a lot of Malaysians have done all kinds of things to make us a better nation, a prouder nation, but it takes time. So this is where I think that if we are fortunate, we will get all these leaders in place with the new administration, and God willing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yes. We're going to move on to the next question. Yes, just one final one. Kabi, we are good with time, I hope. Okay, one last question. And yes, I will do that. The key concern for Malaysia is corruption. What do you see the relationship between governance and corruption?
I mentioned it earlier. I mentioned it earlier, and it's really, there is a direct relationship between governance and corruption. We do good things in governance, but the result is the corruption index is still not delivering, positive signals back to us. So we need to sort of look at it like a supply chain. There's a big supply chain towards between governance, compliance, and corruption. So we need to see, if you look at it, there are gaps in what we are doing. So once we identify what I call the verticals in the supply chain, we might be able to do better work in governance and compliance. Because the index, that's finite, you can't change it, it's there. And so we need to actually keep exploring, keep testing our ability to move towards a higher index. Yeah.
So just a final word on that is, it's all about form versus substance. At the end of the day, it's very easy. We take a lot of things by way of form. We create, but we do not walk the talk. So our problem is that the substance is missing. The form we have embraced. And so we set up all these kind of layers, and yet we find that nothing significant has moved. And why is that so? Because the substance is not there, the mindset is not there. We create positions, but we end up having the same old story. So that's a challenge, and what Yasmin said is fundamentally leadership. So government, politicians, the Secretary Generals of ministries, and boards as well for companies. It's really that. And we can talk till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, getting the right people, we have no choice when it comes to cabinet, right? We have no choice in terms of the Secretary Generals, but the civil service has their own policies and procedures. And there are some very good Secretary Generals in the civil service. And so the issue is empowerment, exactly what our panelists have been saying. Empowering the various people. And the unfortunate part in government is the politicians not allowing civil servants to function the way they should. And in the end of the day, civil servants defer the hierarchical rule, right? Always going back to the minister for instructions. I find that a little bit of a weak point because I've been involved in the Ministry of Finance and always looking at the word from the minister, shall we do this, shall we do that? Fundamentally, they set the tone. If we need to do reforms, you start the process. You don't wait for a minister to say, okay, you can work on this. Utter nonsense, but I've seen that in MOF, and I was in the tax reform committee in MOF for 2 years. Things move too slowly, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to be asking the floor if there's any questions you would like to pose. Yeah, please do come forward. Thank you. Yes, we're going to take one last question, and then we will break for lunch.
I think mine may not be a question, more to a statement. ESG can be GSE. As you know, E is a receiver, and G is the creators, and H is the followers for most of the organization. If the leader, whatever they change, the rest just follow. End up, E will be receiving all the either bad or good things. Are you agree?
Would you like to take? Okay.
Actually, whether it's ESG or GSE or SEG, I don't mind, but we need all three, right? So I'm okay with changing it's just that ESG is what the international framework is, so we just follow. But I agree with you that all three are equally significant. You have a tendency when in ESG, you tend to focus on the E, and you may have a bit weak on the S and the G. So.
Yeah, I just have one last thing to say. I think you know what we do in reducing corruption and improving governance in this country is really for the young. You know, when you speak to the millennials today, they don't have the sense of optimism that we had, you know, when we were growing up. You know, that they believe that meritocracy is not the way forward, that you actually have to pay your way through. And that you don't really have to work hard as long as you know somebody. So that kind of a culture and mentality is really not good for Malaysia. So I think for me and at least for all of us involved in governance, that is what we are trying to do. Yes, of course, economically, reduce corruption, it means better times for the country. But for us, it's for the future Malaysians to believe that this Malaysian is not the country that is the labeling that we have around the world today is that we're this basket case, we're a corrupted nation, which is totally not us, right? We know it's not us. So we have to get rid of that label. So to do that, I think we have to actually actively be realistic, confront the reality of substance over form. We have great form, so let's get down to the substance and prioritize what we need to do. Prioritize, report it so that people know we are moving forward, and to celebrate our achievements. I think that's what we need to do. Yeah, thank you very much.
If I may, just one last one, is the issue is we heard about young children nowadays, or rather teenagers, interested in climate change, interested in the planet. How is it that they have become so interested? Why is it they're not interested in anti-corruption? Why is that not a serious issue for them within the country? And this is where I think civil society can look at maybe the way we deliver our messages may not be right. We need to change that narrative. So that's my question to why is it that has taken on and anti-corruption is not a big thing? Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I think we've actually gathered a lot of insights from our speakers. Thank you so much for that. Kabi, do we have any questions on Slido, any particular one? Because we're just mindful, we've got participants on virtual as well. Yes, and
Stella?
Mr. Sanjeev, you're back. You can hear us now?
No, I could hear you all the while. So I just want to share something to what my fellow panelists said. I think what it said is very important. I think I was a former Malaysian and I'm proud of it before. Now I'm a Singaporean. Not that I'm not proud of it, but I think the important thing is about the core value of the people, right? I don't think we in Malaysia or Malaysians by and large such action. We want to do the right thing, but the problem is, the situation is such that people react differently. So I think at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that does not come taught. It's inborn in you. It's either you have it or you don't. There are people who can take all the money in the world and sleep at night. And
Okay, you're breaking up again. So Sanjeev? Yeah. So I think it's empowerment. So we've actually taken away quite a lot of keywords here, empowerment. And I think what's really important is also the role model. Making sure that I think education, I think it all starts from education as well. We heard a lot about that because if it's not starting from education, what they don't know, they just don't know. And what they see, they'll just follow. So there we have it. We've come to the end of our session today. And thank you very much to all of you for staying back. And for our participants who are virtual, thank you for joining us today.